So sorry. I'm Helene. I am on the rebuilding team. I'm no longer on Vestry, but I am the secretary. I'm the secretary for the rebuilding. We have a lot we're going to get through, and John and Brian are going to provide a lot of information. I'm also on the group that's been working on the kneelers, and I have prototype number 2, Millie Elmore has in her hands right now. So if you would like to try kneeling on it and provide any feedback on the kneeler, that would be great. Gilda has been working very hard on finding us a manufacturer. That is not the color we're going to be using, but it is the feel and the shape that we're looking for. And the hand-stitched will be sewn back on top when we get that far. So it's going to float around. If you have any questions or thoughts, please share them with me afterwards. And John, do you want to use the microphone?
Good morning. I'm going to do a little bit of a talk about where we are in the rebuilding committee, what are some of the steps we've been taking, and sort of what's going on next, but that's sort of next. But first, I just want to announce the bells are ringing again in Biltmore. And I do want to thank everybody that donated. It was beautiful. I mean, we had the team come in, the Bell Company and the Haynes Electric guys. They worked 2 days to get everything put together, and then the final stage was we're working off of temporary power, so we have to keep that in context when you're going about doing this. And Troy, he was the technician from the Verdun, the Bell Company, and his point was, and he made it over and over, he says, John, he says, understand, we don't have enough power to power these bells the way they can really do. But he says, I think there's a way that we can get them ringing on the temporary power. And Haynes worked 3 or 4 times. They were pulling as much power as they could out of our temporary power station. And finally, Troy said, he says, well, I don't know, but let's give it a try. And we were all standing outside. There's 3 of us. We were standing outside, and he started the bells. And I've got to tell you this, there were about 10, maybe 12 people just walking through the village. And like they normally do, when the bells started, they all froze. And they turned and looked back at the church. And I've heard nothing but great comments coming from the business owners down in the village. I talked with Matt over at the Bohemian. He was excited. He said, I heard them this morning. They sound great. They're going to run from 8 in the morning till 8 at night. We shut them off at night just out of courtesy for the other people that live down in the area, but we start them back up at 8. So with that, thanks you again for everyone that donated. It was really great. The second thing is where are we in the rebuilding? And I know that's what everybody's thinking. We are looking at construction companies. We're sort of getting a handle on who's out there that has historical ability that we're looking for to rebuild our church. But before we did that, our committee came up with, we don't know construction. We don't know. We hear the architect talking about doing this. We hear the engineers talking about doing this. We hear the construction guys talking about what it takes to do this. But we as a church, as a group, we don't have that ability to know if that's right or could something be done better. So we're in the process right now of hiring an owner's representative. And in a nutshell, all that person is he works for us, and he's our eyes and ears during this construction, where he takes what's on the plans, he talks to the construction company, and then he makes sure that what's there on the plans is produced by the construction company. Everything happens in sync, and it goes on. So it's a very important job for us, and we've put together an RFP, which is a request for proposal. And all that is just asking, we want to know everything we can know about you as an owner rep. What have you done in the past? What accomplishments do you have? Have you had any difficulties? Give us some references. Let us know who you are. And all those questions are the same for each. We have 4 that we've picked out, and 4, they're going out. And Mona, she's not here. I wish she was. She hurt her knee, so she is, I hope she's feeling good wherever she is. But I don't know if it went out Friday, but if it didn't, I'm thinking it's going to go out Monday or Tuesday to go out to these people, and we're expecting 2 to 3 weeks turnaround, maybe a little bit more if they ask for an extension. And by the end of June, we're hoping to have a good handle on who we are looking at. And then as a Vestry and the RASC, we can sit down and sort of collaborate and figure out who's the best fit for us. And of course, we'll have other meetings to go ahead and keep everyone updated on how that goes. But with that, I think that pre-construction RFP. Yeah. Any questions? Any questions about the, yes?
How does the owner's representative differ from BB&B?
Good question. BB&B is our architect of record. They are the ones that are developing the plans. They're working with the engineers and all the other divisions within the architectural firm to put things together. And that is on paper. Let's just say that's paper. And then when you transfer that paper to the actual rebuilding, that goes to the construction company. And we've got some good firms that we're looking at, but we haven't really gone too far into that. What the owner rep does is he works for us. He or she works for us. And what that'll happen is the owner rep will work with the vestry to make sure that the plans that BBB is coming up with are cost efficient, or to what we're looking for as a congregation, and everything fits. And then they also look at that point when the construction starts to make sure that those plans are put in place just exactly the way we want them. So I guess it would be like somebody from our congregation being on site with the construction team, looking at the plans and making sure that if they're putting in 5 yards of concrete, which I don't think they ever will, but that 5 yards is going in, and it's going in the way the architects wanted it to be. So I think that's where the RASC, we really looked at that as being sort of a crucial element to it, because we don't know the construction ins and outs. We don't know everything about it, and we need to have somebody that does understand it, that is looking out for us. Any other questions? Yes.
When you're looking for a construction company, will they be informed that we're going to have this person?
Yes. In fact, the construction companies, they usually have one. There's usually one in place. We've gone through this for meeting after meeting where it was an owner rep or a construction manager. And we were trying to get the definitions correct, and we were trying to understand which would be a better fit for us. And we came up with the owner rep as being part of it. And it's going to be, it's not a full-time job. It's basically as needed. When we're looking at plans, when we need advice, this person would come in and help us out. Any questions?
I can read our, what we put out to the owner's rep. The cathedral's owner's rep will act as a trusted advisor, an advocate who represents the cathedral's interests throughout the rebuilding process. The owner's rep will broadly work with the cathedral, referred to as the owner moving forward, to finalize the design with the architectural firm hired by the cathedral, to evaluate pre-construction and construction bid packages, to assist with the selection of the general contractors, and to provide oversight, communication, and cost controls during project implementation. It goes on for like 6 or 7 more paragraphs that I'm not going to read to you, but hopefully that gives you a little bit clearer idea who an owner's rep is.
Any other questions? And this isn't going to be the last meeting, so we have. Brian?
All right, yeah, thank you all again so much for coming out. It's great to be in a full church, and it's pretty awesome. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the other side of the rebuilding, which is the how do we pay for it, the capital campaign. and sort of where we are in that process, what is sort of our projected timeline with the capital campaign, and I'll give you as much information as I have. So we started to sort of form a capital campaign committee with our 3 co-chairs. Those co-chairs are Sandra Bird and Jack Parsons and myself. And we have hired a capital campaign consultant, a gentleman by the name of Jeff Hensley with a company called Generis, spelled like generous, and it's what it should be, but they didn't, anyway, it's a missed marketing opportunity. But Generis is the name of the company. They have worked with Episcopal churches for a very long time. In fact, Jeff, just his background is in the Episcopal Church. In fact, he was our dean's professor at the Virginia Theological Seminary at one time. So long history with the church. He also worked with the bishop on developing what was the diocesan capital campaign that has kind of gotten on pause now, or maybe, I don't know what the status of that is, but I suspect with our bishop's change in employment, that has probably stopped. But so Jeff has worked a lot with throughout the diocese and has a really good understanding diocese, and so that's why we felt like he would be a really good option for us. What I have learned I have learned a lot about I've learned about a lot of things, but I've learned a lot about capital campaigns is that it is a process, and there is a psychology behind it, and there is a science behind it that is not just like, hey guys, this is what we need, let's go start raising some money. And so Jeff has been really helpful in helping us understand sort of that process and that psychology. I can rest assured that we are working very hard. We meet every week with Jeff, just about, and so the first few, I guess, weeks or even months was really looking at kind of a screening, if you will, of our parish and of our community, looking at sort of the capacity of both our parish and our immediate community to give, essentially. And we were looking at all manners of data that is publicly available in the world and also within our church to have a better understanding of what is our capacity to sustain a capital campaign for this purpose. As part of that process, we engaged with about 30 different sort of stakeholders, kind of a sampling of our parish, of folks who either are examples of potential donors, of people who have been community connections with us, all for the hope of, or with the desire of better understanding what our capacity of a parish potentially could be, and also trying to identify what they sort of call in that process sort of these lead gifts. It's the process of, we like to try and, when we come out with a public campaign to the world, we'd like to have a little head start. It just psychologically feels a lot better. Sometimes it feels hard to think like, gosh, what's my little contribution going to do in this sea of need? And so it can be helpful to have a little bit of a kickstart and a head start, and that's what we're really working on right now. So the phase of the campaign, it's not secret or anything. I'm happy to, Sandra and Jack and I will tell you anything you want to know about the campaign. That's what's happening. But right now we're in this sort of initial phase where we're trying to identify maybe some potential initial key donors that could really help us kickstart our campaign. That will be happening over the next couple of months through the summer. And then, coincidentally, or as luck will have it, right as we're kicking off our stewardship campaign for next year, we will also be kicking off most likely our public campaign. And by say public campaign, our campaign for all of you, and really asking all of you about what it is that you might be able to do to support this campaign. So in addition, I should say very soon in the next month, the Vestry is going to be receiving a lot of information from Jeff and his team about the data and what he has sort of come to determine. So at I think even at our next Vestry meeting, we're going to be hearing from Jeff about what information did he gather from those interviews, what does he think that our capacity as a campaign might be, and that's going to really help inform our Vestry around other sources of funding that we need to continue to pursue. We are pursuing a lot of sources of funding, please know that. We are pursuing a lot of potentially really incredible grant opportunities. Michael McLaughlin is really helping us kind of drive that ship right now, and which is great. Dean Sarah has been working closely with our FEMA consultant about ways in which we might be able to recoup some of our insurance money. Don't really know exactly what those numbers will be or when that money might come in, but our consultant is feeling very confident that we should hopefully be able to get a reimbursement of the amount we spent out in our insurance, which would be amazing. But again, federal bureaucracies, your guess is as good as mine. I wouldn't hold my breath, and I'm not holding my breath to wait on that money to fix our church. But it may come in, and that's really excellent. And so she is working with that FEMA consultant on that work as well. But then we also need to consider potentially some portion of financing. So there is an element of that as well that the Vestry will be wrestling with. What is it that we have the capacity to take on in terms of a potential loan to help with this initial phase one? And you know, with a loan comes the you have to service that loan. And in order to even take on a loan, the standing committee at the broader diocese, our diocese has to approve that. So, so we have to be able to show not only can we take on that debt, but that we can service that debt. And if the standing committee doesn't agree with us, then the loan doesn't happen. So, so we are working through all of those potential issues. And then I should say, so that happens sort of this month. The next step, this is a little bit off the capital campaign side of it, but the next step for the Vestry will be hearing from our architect. July 7th is when we have a meeting with them. The purpose of that meeting with our architect is what they call a design development page turn. So the architect has been working for the last 3 months on taking all of the initial schematics that the Vestry decided on, and this is sort of the scope of our phase one rebuild, what we really want you to pay attention to, get us back into the sanctuary as soon as possible. We need to have a bathroom. In fact, we have to have 6 toilets in order to do that, which we learned about toilet ratios, and I'd ever wanted to know. And then we want to have some kind of a meeting space as well, so that, as we've talked about before, is our sort of pared down phase one approach. So the architect has taken that information. They're now working through all the design elements, everything from fixtures and furnishings and, you know, any new paint colors or whatever, really getting into the nit and gritty of what way does a door open or close and that kind of thing. They're going to present that information to the Vestry in July. That's going to come along with a new cost estimate of what all that is going to cost for a phase one, which is going to help us further refine what our budgetary needs are. We're going to be able to then receive information from Jeff and his folks about what our potential capacity is as a church to be able to give, what sort of financing that we might need in order to cover that cost. All that kind of comes together, hopefully, and as we need to make adjustments, we will, but then that will then set off the architect on the construction portion, the construction drawings. So then they take all that and now have to turn that into construction drawings so that we can then turn that over to the general contractor and actually, hopefully, start construction. Of course, that does require that we've got to raise the money. So we will be coming back to you throughout the summer once the Vestry has a clear goal of what our capital campaign goal is, what the numbers is that we think we can actually raise internally. So internally, both within our parish, but then also sort of immediately adjacent to our parish, folks that throughout the diocese who might be able or willing to support us. And we will be sharing all of that information as soon as we have it. We don't really have it right now. We're still sort of doing the research and data work. Yeah. So does that make anything else, Jack? Looking at Jack, does that sound right? Okay. All right. Yes, Judy. Of course, gosh, give now, give often. Yes. Yes, absolutely. So our treasurer is working with our finance department and Jack and developing some procedures about, but honestly, as long as you earmark that payment towards the rebuild, we have a separate rebuild fund that is being maintained and managed separately. It's going to get a little bit more fleshed out than what I'm telling you right now, but by the experts here on how we actually bring that money in. But yeah, absolutely. If you've got money to give, please do. But we are going to be asking, I suspect, and this is just sort of forecast for y'all, we're going to be asking for a pledge, most likely a multi-year pledge towards the rebuild that will be separate and apart from the operational pledging, which we have to still keep the church open and the lights on and people paid. So that's so those are going to be kind of two separate pots, two separate pledges that we're asking for. But we are sort of figuring out how to do that in the most effective way in the next coming months. Yes, ma'am. So the question was payment. There absolutely has. We had about $1 million in insurance coverage. That was just paid out. You know, oftentimes with insurance companies, you might have an adjuster come in. They help negotiate rebuild or remediation. I think in our case, they realized that the cost of remediation rebuild was going to be so much more than our insurance coverage. They just paid us out and said, here you go. That insurance comes through the church insurance. It's literally what it's called. It's what the company is called. It's called church insurance. And we have a policy through them. We have a much larger policy for our church, but $1 million was our flood coverage. It was kind of set by them. It's not something that we really control or have control over. And we will be looking at that as ahead in the future. And whether we might need to increase that coverage, I certainly hope that another storm level event like this doesn't happen again, but certainly we want to be prepared if it does. But yes, I will say the entirety of that insurance budget was paid out to the remediation company plus some. So there's not any insurance money available for the actual rebuild. The insurance was used for the cleanup. Yes, sir, in the back.
You kind of partially answered my question, but I'm committed to this 100% because I do want to know what's being done as far as mitigation of future damage. We're rebuilding in a place that's going, this will happen again.
Sure. Yeah, it's a great question. So I'm glad you asked that. So BB&B came back in mid-April, and part of my job was to sort of give you a recap if you didn't have a chance to see or visit with our architect. And I will say the architect's presentation is online as well, like the PDF kind of like the deck that she came and presented on. When we started with the architect, we gave them several key priorities, one of which was mitigation of flood risk in the future, and what is it that we're going to do to try and protect water. As you recall, or if you know, the water really came in through the crawl space, through the basement. So it all kind of came in there and then came up into the church. We didn't see any cracks in the walls. We didn't see any windows broken. It wasn't that the water was coming in from the outside. It was really coming in from down below and then up into the space. So we have tasked the architect, and they have put together some really sort of a variety of plans to sort of to mitigate this risk in the future. So some of those things that they're looking at, and again, no official decision made here yet. This is going to come at the end of July when they sort of present their design. I should say that they are also actively working with zoning and permitting. They're actively working with the HRC at the moment to evaluate these plans or ideas that they have. We could come up with 1 million ideas, but if the HRC or planning and zoning says, nope, you can't do it, then we can't do it. So those two things have to really be working in concert, and that's what we're working on now. But just so you give you some idea, we're working on sealing the basement, basically. There's not going to be really much of anything in the basement at this point. But by sealing it off, I mean the doors that are currently access to the basement will be waterproof, sealed doors, so that if water comes up against it, it'll be sealed off. We're looking at the other various windows that sort of access those grade level or ground level windows that allowed water to intrude, and we're trying to figure out ways in which we can either close those off or block those off in some way so that water can't get in that way. So we want to eliminate the possibility of water getting into the crawl space, number one, I say crawl space, it's a basement, but rather we want to eliminate that. We're also looking at, because we've had to take all of our mechanical systems up out of the basement, for example, our HVAC system, and the various HVAC systems that were ruined because they were sort of at grade level, they were on the ground level, and so we want to figure out ways to protect those. That's going to be basically $1 million investment to replace our HVAC system in the church, and we don't want to ruin that if we can help it. We also don't really want to raise it up 3 or 4 feet like they are doing throughout the rest of the village. Because then now we're looking at instead of a beautiful stained glass window, we're looking at a stained glass window with an electric unit, a HVAC unit on the outside of it. So they've come up with some ideas on how to build some flood barriers around those mechanical items, things that would look like they've always been there, but basically a brick wall is kind of what they're looking at around various sort of units. A couple places. They're also looking at some deployable flood walls, so things that could be stored, and they're very light and deployable. They're stored in the basement, but if we projected or thought, man, this might be another flood event, we want to bring those out, we can bring those out, deploy those, so that they would then block not only some mechanical elements, but also could block doorways on the campus. They could block hallways. They could block anything where we don't want water to intrude if it were to get up sort of onto the campus again. So that's another one of the various elements that they're looking at. So it's a kind of faceted approach of flood mitigation, but it's absolutely a priority that we are factoring into this phase one. This is not something we're going to say, oh, we'll do some flood mitigation, but we'll wait 5 years to do it, because then, right, Murphy's Law would say we'll have another flood at 4 years. So we don't want to do that. What's that? Oh, yes, and so we're also looking at, and sorry, one more thing, we're looking at, we were raising the porch as well. That's one of the design elements. So raising the porch about 8 or 9 inches, basically to eliminate the step. So we used to have that kind of significant step to get into the church. So raising the porch will, again, provide some level of flood mitigation. It's not feet, but it's inches, and so that actually accomplishes 2 priorities that we had. One was flood mitigation and prevention, but also accessibility in the church. So we want anyone to be able to access any door that they want to in the church, regardless of ability. So, if we raise that the porch up, we've have a design for a ramp, an accessible ramp off to the kind of the side of the porch, that folks can come up that ramp and enter any of the 3 entries at the front of the church, regardless of ability. Yes, sir.
This is twofold. How are we on office space to know we're living a waste of generosity to somebody else?
Sure.
And also, is the Warner building going to be in the next phase?
That's great.
How are we on office space?
Sure. Yeah, good question. So the question for out in the world was, what's our plan with the office space and the Warner building specifically? So yes, we are currently living in the generosity of John Bell's, I don't know the name of his company, but the real estate company, and they have rented some space to us at a significant discount above the Joseph A. Banks store in the village. We know, based on that agreement, they've said if a tenant comes along and wants this space, y'all are out. And so we understand that. But so anyone who comes and looks, we give a bad impression and kick and scream. And we say, this is a terrible place and it floods all the time. So we're trying that. No. So yes, so that could happen at any time. We have no idea. Our current lease with them is sort of a loose kind of lease agreement through the October, but then it will be renewable as long as the space is available. What happens next? I don't know, to be honest. We don't have a plan for a church office after that. It may become, it may have to, the church staff and clergy have been, did work remote for a while. That wasn't ideal. So we would like to identify some other potential space, but we don't really quite have it. The Warner building, the RASC team is also doing some sort of feasibility research around that. We had a structural engineer, the structural engineer that's working on the church walked over there the last time they were here, and just sent us a report that I need to forward out to the RASC that just came through like this weekend. So they wanted to look at the structural integrity of the building first to determine, is it feasible to keep that building, or do we need to do something more with it? I think to answer your other question, is it in phase 1? It is not. It is not anywhere part of this plan. It's not on our architect's radar. We did not include the architect in that. It just really didn't make sense to do that. And so RASC is sort of doing a feasibility study, as it were, to see if we could get back into the Warner building, what that would take, what that would cost to do. And then we'll see. Yeah, sure.
I am not that tall. All right. So we are renting this office space above Joseph A. Banks, and we took a look at that cost, and RASC was wondering about, how could we get into the Warner building for kind of like the same cost idea, like over time? And the idea would not be to redo Warner building as it was, but to redo the Warner building with 1 bathroom, because we've learned that bathroom indicates space, one of those. And Thomas Wolf, who's a local builder, walked through the space with us and gave us some ideas of some very basic part of the building would not be used. There'd be 1 bathroom on the main level, there'd be a greeting space and 2 office spaces. So we're not looking to redo the Warner building in full, but very basic, depending on this report we get back from the structural engineer. So I just didn't want anyone to think we're gonna like completely redo the Warner building, because it's more of a flood risk than the church. And we want to make sure that anything we do is not for naught. And then the idea, once in phase one on the church side are church offices, so ideally if we can do something with the Warner building that's simple, maybe we could rent out that to somebody else. So those are just some of our ideas that we had. Does that make sense? Any questions on that? Okay, thanks.
Thanks. And also, just a reminder, within the phase one plan, we are adding what would be likely a temporary office space for priest office spaces, so or staff office spaces. We've often looked at ways in which we could utilize other spaces that are currently being worked into that phase one. For example, the robing rooms where the choir changes may have some temporary office type elements in it for the staff during the week. So we're trying to really utilize whatever kind of in creative way, whatever space that we will ultimately have, we're trying to utilize that in the best way we can. Yes, ma'am. Yeah. So we have not heard anything about the hotel that I've heard anyway, and we've certainly asked. I think the last we heard is they were reevaluating their plans and their options. If you recall, when they came to report to us before the storm, they were like, we are amazing at flood mitigation. We have the best technology. We're awesome. We'll never flood. And then 2 months later, they flooded. So I think they were like, ooh, maybe things are not as good as we thought they were. And so I think they're reevaluating that, but they still own the property. They could still certainly use it however they wanted to use it. But as far as I know, no new plans have been developed. Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
Has there been any talk within the village not building more? Because my idea, not you totally wrong, is that the more buildings you have and build more, the higher the water will rise because it has to go around.
Sure, yeah, the more impermeable space you have, or elements you have, the water's got to go somewhere. Not that I'm aware of, honestly. I don't know, that's the short answer. I've not heard anything like that. We've been in regular contact with the builder, or the business association down there. Ben Mitchell, who's the president of that association, works for the John Bell Company, he's a member at Trinity. So, I think, if you ever wanted to know more about that, I would point you in that direction, because he's going to have much better intel on that than I would. Other questions? So one thing, and then I'll just sort of open it up generally. I think one thing I'd kind of be remiss not to mention, and because we have been getting a lot of feedback from you all, and it's been awesome to hear. And a lot of the feedback we get is, why is it taking so long? Why can't we just go back to the church now? I was there for that Christmas thing and it looks fine. Just turn the lights on. What's the problem? And the building looks fine and it looks great. And we also hear I can't do this. I can't do this St. George's thing. It's a great church and all, but I just don't like being there. It's not the same as my home. It's not the place where I want to be. It's not church to me. And so, maybe I'm not going to come back until you guys rebuild it, or maybe I'm not going to be involved until you rebuild. And that's tough feedback to hear, I'll be honest, and we hear it a fair amount, or I certainly hear it a fair amount, and it's hard to hear. And so I think I'd be remiss not to say that, I, like all of you, am yearning very deeply to be back in that church. And I drive past it almost every day. I see it almost every day. It's in my neighborhood, basically. And so it's hard. It's hard to not be there. But I think that I have to remind myself is that, and it's important, and I think it's something that we all know, but if we are prioritizing a building, an actual physical space, over what is actually our church, which is all of us as a community, then we're kind of missing the mark. Likewise, I think if we're prioritizing bricks and mortar over being in relationship with one another and being in community with one another and turning to your neighbor and talking to people and rebuilding ministries like they were, what thrived, what made All Souls so amazing, yes, it's a beautiful church, but what made it so amazing was all of us being together, working together, doing amazing things together. And so I think that we have to keep that in mind. And if we lose sight of that, then I think we're losing sight of the good book and what the message of the gospel. Likewise, I have told you all at annual meetings before, I think that All Souls has always had some of the most amazing clergy. It's one of the things that attracted my wife and us to, we felt like we could come into this space and actually get educated by these incredibly smart people. And the clergy are amazing, and I have always felt that way. But clergy come and go, and we know that. And those of you who have been in this church for 30 or 40, 50 years know that clergy comes and goes. And while they're amazing people, they are not the church. We are the church. And so, again, the more focus and attention that we put on, or the more responsibility that we place on these people who, this is their job, and they will come and they will go, but the more responsibility that we put on them to fix us, we are going to fail, and we are going to be really disappointed. So I will encourage you all, there's no doubt that the clergy has a responsibility. They all have a responsibility. We all have a responsibility. Your leadership, your vestry has a responsibility. The leaders of your RASC team has a responsibility. We will rebuild your church. That will happen. Trust me on that. That will occur. But if we do not rebuild one another, if we do not build each other up, we will lose all souls. And that hurts me. So. All right, I'm going to get off my soapbox now. If you have any questions, though, seriously, wide open. I don't need some RASC. If you guys have other questions, please ask away. Yes?
This isn't directly related, but we are going to meet with our bishop for this diocese, and we are the cathedral for the diocese.
Yeah.
And I think that it would seem like anybody who would be vying for that position would need to be well informed of the status of the cathedral. And I just wonder what our responsibility as the congregation of the cathedral is in informing that process of being part of it.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I will say to that, we have gotten some feedback from our diocese, not just at the bishop's office, but he has been out talking to folks about, and he actually has really been a great champion of our cathedral and space. And I've heard from other people at other churches who are like, "Oh, you got All Souls? God, we just had your bishop here, and he wouldn't stop talking about All Souls." So, and so they're like, "How's it going? What's going on? What's the deal?" And I think that we have hoped that we would get saved. That there would be all this money out there, and they would come and bring us all, whatever. The feedback that we have gotten from the diocesan and other parishes around is just what I was saying. It's like, we know that you're the cathedral, but we don't feel like we're in relationship with you. We don't feel like we really know you. Your members don't come to our church. We don't really necessarily come to your church. And so while we really want to support you, and we want to support the cathedral, we think that's really important, we really want to be in relationship with you first. We want to hear from you guys. We want you guys to come visit us. We want to understand why, what a cathedral is and what it's supposed to do, but it's really about people. And again, being in sort of community with those broader parish members. So again, we as a church have a lot of work to do to build that relationship. I think in some ways we've sort of been like, we're the cathedral, but it's been a name only, and we haven't necessarily done the job of a cathedral, which is to be in greater relationship with all the parishes around our diocese. So, I think, it's unfortunate that we have lost some folks who have gone to other churches, but I also hope that they're telling the story of All Souls when they're there, and I hope that maybe they'll come back to us once we can rebuild. But we have a lot of work to do to build up that job and that role. Likewise, I think there's any part of the bishop discernment process is going to be, in fact, I think it's twofold. They're going to say, hey, you've got a massive issue with your cathedral, and you got to figure this out. It's a huge cost, and it's an element that needs to be repaired. They also are going to have to figure out, Lake Logan, and this is my own plug just because I'm on their board, but Lake Logan and the Episcopal Conference Center that we have out there are also at tremendous risk right now because somebody owns that lake and that dam that is not us. And that person right now is itching to get out of Canton, and he is looking to make as much money as he can before he does that. So there's a risk there as well. And those are two major elements that any new bishop is going to have to wrestle with 100% and figure out what to do about that. So yeah, we've got some work to do. Yeah, Betsy in the back.
I would just like to say in terms of, we are
June 10th.
Wednesday, okay, so if you have an interest in participating in the search process, go to the RASC website, because that is a great way to see beyond this parish.
We also, there's an email that got sent out by Casey this past Monday with more information about those committees and a link to that.
And we have a member of our standing committee, Kim Miller, here.
So we're asking ways. Number one, apply for these committees. The letter went out to all of you. It's on the RASC website. It's on our website. Apply. If you don't get on it, keep sending letters to these committees and to the standing committee of your concerns, what you want to see, what you want to hear, what you want to do. It's a big process. Also, once we get down to the final candidates, we're going to be doing meeting and greeting in all the different areas. Come show up, question, ask, learn, find out what's going on with these people that we've chosen. And I am on your standing committee. Any questions about all that stuff, please let me know.
Any other questions? Yes, sir.
Is there any possibility that we will get heat in the church for winter?
So the question is there any possibility that we will get heat in the church before winter? We will continue to heat the space. Yes, John, I don't know, did we take all the conditioning out? I can't remember. We took all of it out. So we took it out. So we were conditioning the space. We've been conditioning the space for the last year and a half. It's been costing about $13,000 to $15,000 a month. It's been a huge cost. And what we kind of got back from our architect, which was, you don't really need to do that. As long as the space is being, dehumidified and you're monitoring for, any potential issues. But, they were like, we repair and restore churches that have been sitting empty for 100 years. You're going to be fine. But John's going to know a lot more about that than I would. But
Brian's exactly correct.
sorry.
Can I share the microphone?
You can, John. Yeah, you can take it if you'd like.
Yeah, the architects told Brian and I that there wasn't a need to do the air conditioning this summer. They didn't really go so far as say no heat, and that's still sort of out in the, to be considered. But what we've been doing at the church was we were underwater. The floors were underwater. And we have a building science fella that's been working with the church. Josh is really good, and I've had him monitoring the moisture level in the floors. Because when we first walked in, 20 months ago, when we walked in that October 1st, and we're trying to evaluate, get the mud out, get the floors were curling. The first thing that was done was we need to start drying it out. And that was the purpose of having the heaters, the dehumidifiers, and we ran those. And Josh from Building Science monitored the humidity and the moisture in the floors for 15 months, for 12 months. And what we found was doing all that, we ran the air conditioners in the summer and the heater during the winter, those floors started drying out, and now they're running around at 10 or 11%, which is really dry for those floors, and basically they're in really good shape. That's when the architects came back and they said, well, you've done your job. You've dried the church out good. Now, All Souls has still had that predicament where the water table is so high, there's going to be dampness in the basement. We took out the dehumidifiers. Brian and I are working back and forth, determining if we need to bring dehumidifiers back in. I was in the church this morning, and you can smell a little bit of a musty smell in the basements. It's not in the parish hall, and it's not in the church, but it's just because we did take out the dehumidifiers, and instead of 60% humidity in the basements, it's now running about 74, 75%. So we're going to continue to monitor it, and it's not it's sort of a game. You play a little bit, but if we can reduce some of the costs that we were spending on the heating and air conditioning, we can apply that to the rebuilding, get ourselves back into the church. And I think that's really what we're trying to do, is take the money that we have and how do we best use it. And if we can get away with not doing it, the church was running 70 degrees this morning, and it was 65% humidity. That is really good. We want to keep it between 50 and 70% humidity in there. We have fans running 24/7. Those fans have been running for a year now. And all it does is, that's again coming from the building science. Church reduces the amount of any mold or mildew that builds up. And right now, we've got a lot of things going on really good there. So I'll get out of the way, but no, it's monitoring, and we're going to keep looking at it to bring the paint. We probably will come back in with some form of heat this winter. I just think that we're going to look at it, and again, we'll monitor it. We have Sunbelt, and we have some other rental companies around, but we'll take care of that. But that's a good question.
Thanks, John. Yes, ma'am. Probably not. I don't anticipate it. I mean, I have no idea. I mean, we did get some FEMA money back for our van. We had that we lost, and a few things like some minor money. But I think whether we're going to know we're going to have, $1 million back from FEMA or not, I don't know. I will tell you that while that will be incredibly helpful, it is not going to replace the need for you to all dig deep and contribute. It's we're still figuring out what that phase one, the real kind of getting a clearer picture on what that budget will be. It's projected right now in sort of $4.5 to $5 million or so. Maybe we can get it a little bit less depending on costs and things and plans. But it's going to be an all-in, all-hands kind of project. It's not going to be, oh, good, we don't have to give anything because FEMA's paying for it. Ain't going to happen. Anyone else? One of the things I'll say real quick, we did get some feedback that folks felt like they didn't have enough information, and so I was like, oh, I told you all at the beginning of this year, my job was to get you to a point where you were tired of hearing from us, and you felt like you had all the information you could use. So it was good feedback to hear. We still need to keep doing more. RASC needs to do more. Vestry needs to do more. Everyone needs to be keeping you informed. So we are looking at more ways in which we can continue to pump information out. We're going to be looking at the website itself, maybe try and give folks a perspective on timeline, where we've come, where we're going, so folks don't feel like we've just been sitting around twiddling our thumbs. I can promise you we have not, but sometimes it's nice to see that in a graphic format, so we're going to work on that. Try and improve our FAQs and stuff so on an ongoing basis, so that if you're looking for information, that's a place to do it. I will tell you that if you ever have any questions at all, you can always grab a Vestry member. We are talking about it all the time, so any Vestry member is perfectly capable of informing you of what's going on. Certainly any of the RASC team and what they're doing certainly can help give you information. But if you really feel like you're out in the dark and you want to know more, turn the light switch on. There's a lot of information out there, and we'll get it to you. And happy to give you any information at all that you want. So. Speak now or forever? No, I never hold your peace, given what I just said. Any other questions?
Thank you.
Yes, thank you all.